Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network. In today's lockdown interview, I'm joined by author Una McCormack. Synonymous with Star Trek's literary world, Una was tasked with the challenge of writing the Star Trek Picard prequel novel, The Last Best Hope, which has received acclaim from fans and critics alike. Una joins me to take us behind the scenes in the creation of this novel. Thanks so much to Una for joining me, and I hope you too will enjoy this interview. And if you're keen on reading the book before or after, you'll find it available in independent bookstores and online. Enjoy the show. You're a prolific kind of Star Trek author. Number one finally earned a first name recently and being named after you. Can you tell me a little bit about your Star Trek story as an author and as a fan?
Yeah, absolutely. I like prolific. I've started getting veteran now, which makes me feel very old. But I like prolific. I wouldn't really have called myself a Star Trek fan, although I did a lot of sort of things that I suppose most people don't do. So I was sort of watching. It was quite tricky to watch Star Trek when I was growing up. You didn't really get it in the UK in the late 70s, sort of early 80s. So I didn't really watch it when I think a lot of my friends over in the States of my age were, it was permanently on syndication. So I didn't really watch it until the movies. And I was just the right age for them, sort of early 80s. I was probably about 10, 11 or 12. And I'd seen Star Wars, so, I loved a spaceship. So I was sort of dragged in. Then Next Gen started arriving. It's being trailed sort of 87. And I was able to get it on video cassette from Blockbusters. So that was in sort of 87, 88. And then I started reading the novels. So I think, I wasn't really a Star Trek fan in my teens. Then I go, apart from reading the novels, apart from watching the movies, apart from watching, making trips to the video shop to get Next Gen. So that really was my story. It was sort of a bit of a back routing. And really it was the movies and then Next Gen arriving just when I was the right age to be wanting to watch a science fiction show. And then after that, I sort of followed them as they came out. I kind of dipped out midway through Voyager, I think, or just a bit of Enterprise, and then really came back to Deep Space Nine in my just before it ended, the sort of late 90s. Yeah, so that was my route in.
What's the journey from fandom, for example, there to becoming a published author for Star Trek books? A lot of us would be maybe lucky to kind of write a bit of fan fiction. You've gone the full way and kind of become a published author. How did you sort of bridge that gap?
I was invited. It was all completely lucky timing. Everything lined up. I'd been a fan fiction writer from when I was, I did, Blake Seven Stickman cartoons as a kid, and the odd Doctor Who sort of story. And then I really started writing fan fiction again when I got online. So it was sort of, I would say it was the mid 90s, maybe 96, 97. I kind of got online properly. We're talking, the web's really just arrived, and I'm that old. So the web is just sort of coalescing, and people are kind of really going online and finding interest groups. I found a Blake Seven fan fiction group. I joined that. I got very involved. And then Deep Space Nine arrived. I started watching it and started writing fan fiction and posting it on Usenet groups, as it was. And then basically I got an email out of the blue from the editor of Pocket Books of the Star Trek range saying, I'm looking for new voices. You've been recommended. Would you like to pitch some stories? And that's how it happened. Everything just lined up, and that wouldn't happen now. I don't think. I'm not even sure that would happen on other fandoms, other shows. You would be because it's so sort of carefully monitored now, licensed material. I think you'd be asking for it. You'd be looking for somebody with a track record in this. So everything just lined up at the right time. I'd got a bit better at writing because I've been writing for about 5 years. They were looking to commission because we were coming up to, I think, the 10th anniversary of DS9, and I happened to be online and easily traceable. So it was all really lucky timing on my part.
Before your kind of Picard book that we're going to focus on today, you've written largely about Deep Space Nine, focus on the Cardassian species. What is it about Deep Space Nine that appeals to you perhaps so much, and what makes it such an exciting world to kind of write in?
I've joked about this before, but I'm watching a different show from everyone else. I'm watching a show called Star Trek Cardassia, and I got very sort of involved in that story. I came in to Deep Space Nine at Way of the Warrior, so I came in at the start of season 4, and that's a really great, adventurous episode. You've got Garrick within pretty much the first minute being completely brilliant, and so it was all of these things came together. I think watching Garrick, that performance and that character, getting very involved in the Cardassian story, which is kind of ramping up, and getting very involved in the ongoing narrative, because DS9 is sort of a show of two halves, isn't it? So you've sort of got there's lots of sort of stories that are building up, but I think you've got the pre-Worf and then the post-Worf stuff where the storytelling really takes off as a serial. So I got very involved in the serial story. And Cardassia's story, I think, is just really it's tragic, it's hubristic, it's gutting. You're sort of watching it obliquely because the focus isn't always there, so you're having to piece these gaps together in the back of your mind. And I was very lucky to be commissioned to get to fill in those gaps and to write that story. So I think watching it obliquely and getting very, very involved in that side story, and then just finding a real tragedy to it and wanting to explore that and see how this obviously very cultured civilization could perform these acts of barbarism, and sort of diagnose and explore that through characters like Garrick and Zial, and all of them really. So that was sort of my route in.
You've written since some Star Trek novels, Discovery, but the one that's really been making waves in the past few months has been The Last Best Hope, the first Picard prequel novel. I was curious, what was the process for this book? So obviously the show premiered in January. How far out is it when you get involved in the process as an author? And what's the selection process for you writing the book? Do you get a tap on the shoulder? Do you have to audition, pitch? How does it all work, and what's been sort of the time frame?
The time frame was less than a year. I think I'd probably have to check emails now, but I don't think it was as long ago as the previous January. And I was writing the book during sort of June, July, August last year. So I sort of delivered towards the end of August last year. But before that, we'd gone through quite a lengthy process of outlining the novel so that it tied in with the show. And in this case, it was a tap on the shoulder. I was invited to do the book. So they asked me, we've got one slot, we'd like Una to do it. So which was lovely, obviously, because it was going to be so high profile and really exciting. And the show that everyone was, not even Star Trek fans, everyone was talking about Patrick Stewart coming back as Picard. So to get invited to do this was absolutely brilliant. And then I would say it was probably about 9 months altogether. The scripts were still being written, and I was very lucky I had access to scripts as they were being rewritten and changing. So you were sort of, we worked quite hard. I worked very hard with Kirsten Beyer, who was the co-creator and one of the co-writers. And we worked very hard to sort of come up with a story which we knew would kind of amplify and enhance what was going to be on screen. But also at the same time, we're not quite sure how it ends yet. So let's sort of make sure that the story that we tell is kind of sealed off from that. And it is a prequel. It's set about 14 or 15 years before. So there was a lot that you could say, we don't have to worry about how the show comes out, because we can work with what we've got, because the characters don't know what's going to happen. So that's okay. It's certainly less than a year. And then it was quite an intense write, but I really loved it. It was brilliant.
What is your mission when you get that tap on the shoulder? How much sort of freedom do you have or goals to hit? do you get when you're given sort of, this is the project, this is what we want? Is it, say, with your Deep Space Nine novels, you can write about this post-Cardassia world that we last saw in 1999, whereas
Yeah.
this, we need it to end sort of at a very perhaps specific place. What's kind of the remit that you get, and how much can you play with it?
Well, I had with the Cardassian novels, I pretty much had complete freedom with those. I mean, we did there's certain things you can't do. You can't kill off certain characters, or it was part of the DS9 relaunch. So there were other storylines going on, but I kind of hived off this area of Cardassia where people kind of went, oh, what's she doing over there, and leave her to it. So I kind of had sort of marked off that territory and had pretty free reign in it. On the Picard book, we worked, Kirsten and I worked very, very closely, a couple of other people as well, to work this story up together. So it's much more collaborative. And I don't think of that as constraint or lack of freedom. I sort of think of that as a different way of coming up with story. And then in terms of, so we kind of worked the story together, then I wrote an outline, and then we sort of tinkered with that a bit more, and then we came up with an outline we were all really happy with, and then I went off and wrote the book. And and in terms of how I arranged that, what kind of creative or tonal or image decisions I was making, that was all free. But again, I wanted it to feel like a part of the show. So the kind of imagery and tone and language and symbolism of the script, I was trying to feed into the book as much as possible. So it's. I guess other writers would kind of go, oh, that feels like there's lots of constraints on you. But I like working that way. I like feeling in conversation with other texts. So it feels very creative for me. So I had a great time.
Before you sort of started the work on the book, did you sort of dive back into the Next Generation, the films, other forms of media to kind of get yourself back in the voice of what Picard was? And did you have any sort of preconceptions yourself or your own ideas about, I wonder where Picard was in this post-Nemesis world before Picard?
I tried to. I've watched TNG a lot over the years, and I'd watched it. I'd say recently. I'd probably watched it about 4 years ago. My little girl when I was on maternity leave. I kind of watched it with her when she was tiny. So I feel very immersed in TNG. I've sort of been watching it on and off for 30 years. So I went back to a handful of episodes. I sort of picked out ones just to sort of get that flavour. But really what I absolutely immersed myself in was the scripts that were coming in. Because it wasn't a TNG tie-in novel, it was a Picard tie-in novel. So I felt it had to be closer to that show. It had to feel a piece of that show. And then when I finished that, I then was starting my other book, which is coming out this year, is the autobiography of Catherine Janeway. So I kind of sealed the Picard book up, sent that off to the editors, and I sat down and did a complete rewatch of Voyager in about 4 weeks or something. I really immersed myself in Voyager, so it was a real palate cleanser. But I wanted it to be a Picard book more than a next gen book. I think if you see what I mean by that.
Yeah. I was always curious with the scripts and obviously the casting, because TV is so fluid. How did those sorts of scripts change over time? Was there an element where you were like, right, I've got this draft of the script here. I think I've got an idea of how this Raffi character might be. I'm going to kind of go on from that point, and then revision 6 or 7 comes through, and do the characters kind of change a little bit? Was it always a case that your transcript, for example, did it have to always be a sort of living, breathing document that you could go back and change, or have to maybe not hold on to things too tightly because one writer might come in on episode 4 that might have a very different idea from episode 3 in terms of the logistics of something that is so far away from production release?
Right, yeah. The characters stayed the same. The characters that you could see that these characters were very clear in mind. And what really was changing was the plot, the events, or the order in which they were happening. So the scripts was coming, you might get a scene cut or a slight nuance in it change because some material had been shifted a little later. But the characters, and that, of course, this is just a gift for me because it meant that everything that sort of I had to write in my book, which was about people like Raffi or Jurati wasn't really changing. We were seeing earlier versions of them, but their backstory wasn't changing, and that's what I was writing. And the stuff that was changing was stuff that didn't impact my book. It was the narrative of Picard. So the stuff that really wasn't changing was the events of the show. And of course, because it was a prequel novel, people wouldn't know that was happening. It wasn't germane to my story. It was the characters that mattered. So it all sort of slotted together in a way. I couldn't worry about how the show was going to unfold, and I didn't need to for the book. But the voices of the characters stayed the same. I was in on the loop. They were kind of keeping me up to date on who was being cast as well. So I was able to kind of go off, and I knew Agnes Jurati. I'd watched her on the Sorkin show, the newsroom, and a couple of the other actors as well. I kind of went, oh, right, I'll watch a couple of episodes of this or of that. And see, obviously they're going to perform it differently, but you want a sense of how they move or how they look. If you're doing descriptive material through another character's eyes, you kind of give a sense of the physicality. So it all just worked out extremely well. The scripts were more, I was reading for things like, well, for character, but for things, like I say, for sort of tone or symbolism or imagery. So there was lots of sort of, I found it was quite autumnal. I found there were lots of things like fading flowers or, a fruit falling from the tree. Lots of sort of references to mechanical or constructed life, things like golems or this kind of thing. I was just sort of, trying to feed in that material to it.
One of my questions would be sort of, when you get those scripts, for example, how did you read them? Because was it sort of like a case of, oh my God, here's Captain Picard's first return, the script for episode 1. Was it a case of, a glass of wine, reading the script by kind of candlelight, or was it very much like, right, kick back in the computer chair, scroll through it, scribbling some notes? What was your process? I suppose it's difficult because you're a fan, but also kind of a creative as well. How did you meet the scripts?
It was like Christmas morning. It was amazing. It was fantastic. Oh, I can't believe this. So, I was sort of tearing them open with my teeth. It was really, really exciting. And then I read them several times, sort of took extensive notes, and then new ones were coming in, and I kind of go, I don't have time to read all these. They're also, obviously there's periods of intensive rewrites happening. So I kind of go, okay, well, I can't get back to that one over the next 5 days. Let me just wait, and then I'll read the draft that comes in. And then I sort of took when the pace slowed down, I kind of took a lock. I went through the sort of last version and took really quite extensive notes. But it was super exciting. It was just really good fun. Imagine, because I am a fan as well. So I can't believe I'm going to read this.
I know, I can relate. I got the links from CBS to watch the episodes like a few days early, or sometimes like a week early, and it would just be like, you would get it in the inbox, and you're like, oh my God. I remember the one time being in Glasgow, and I'm like, all right, I'll be home in a few hours' time, and just like coming back on the train, and at like 1 a.m. back in Edinburgh, sitting on my TV, booting up the episode, and I was like, oh my God, I had to get into it straight away. So I'm glad to know that even as a professional, you've still got that burning fandom as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You couldn't do this job if you didn't love this stuff. I think it would be a cynical job that you would do on it, and people would know. People wouldn't enjoy the book. It wouldn't be the best book it could be, because everyone involved in this loves it. So want to do something really good with it, and I hope people feel we did.
My dream has always been, and I think it really felt brought to life in this book, was I love the idea of sort of a Star Trek version of the West Wing. You were talking about Aaron Sorkin earlier, and I felt like I got that with this book, because sometimes in Star Trek it feels like it's, this universe within a ship or a station, whereas Deep Space Nine, it feels so huge. With this, it feels like we've got the Federation, we've got the Starfleet, how everything all kind of comes together, and how big this basically universe is. How is it for you to try and get that all onto a page, that the book covers different planets, agendas, characters, Romulans, Federation, starships? How did you sort of plan out how each kind of thread was going to kind of unfold? And is it a case of sort of post-it notes saying, right, this is the Verity journey, and then this is what it's like on Romulus, and then sort of compiling them together. How did you make such a big universe fit into a page and into your mind, I guess?
So I used to teach creative writing at university level, and I would always say that a novel is the size of project precisely too big to fit in your head. So, so the challenge and the sort of excitement of a novel is that you can't hold it in your head all at once. So I'm not much of a post-it note person. I do lots of I like to have a snapshot. I might have a snapshot of the plot all on one page that I've kind of hand drawn as a sort of mind map, or I'll have character notes, or I'll have a file of plot beats. What I also have is a very, very detailed outline. So that outline that we worked on was probably about 8,000 words. And when you're commissioned to do a 100,000 word novel, that's a tenth of your book. You're almost at 10% already. So I find that I like to post-it notes. There's too much going on, and I need to have a kind of clarity to what I'm doing when I'm novel writing, and I need it to all feel quite paired and under control, because it is quite not under control. And then you just sort of feel your way through. You try and feel the rise and fall of the drama and the is this scene getting a bit slow? Is it doing what I need it to do? So I think I had a review which was really, really funny. It said, "Oh, this book was a missed opportunity. This book could have been War and Peace." I thought, "Oh, thank you. That's very flattering." But it was too short. It was too short, and I do sympathise with that. I probably could have written, easily another 50,000 words just on the. We could have kept expanding this book indefinitely, but we did only have 100,000 words. So I think then you try and be very, very tight on structure. It's got very standard 3-act structure. You try to be quite tight on what's happening in each chapter, so sense that each chapter has a narrative, and then within those chapters that the scenes themselves are quite tightly constructed and have a kind of arc in them, a trajectory in them. So at all levels, it's sort of trying to make sure that everything is quite tightly focused. You've not been with this character for a while, so you should probably get back to them. Or you've left something hanging to build suspense for the next time that you see them. And it's just trying to work on that macro and micro level at the same time. And that's what I'd say. I'd do that with any novel. But this one in particular, because the material was so vast. The previous book that I'd done that was like this was a novel about Cardassia, which covered about the same length of time, about 5 years. But it was only through the point of view of one character. Whereas in this one, I think it had about half a dozen vocalizing characters, didn't I? So at all points, each one of these people as a point of view character probably could have carried a novel. But you had to just sort of, make sure that you felt everyone was getting heard and that the story we were getting through it. So there's a lot going on.
The Picard show itself is quite unique in terms of its sort of makeup of the creative team. I mean, two of the creators are Michael Chabon and you mentioned there Kristen Beyer, two authors. What's it like working in sort of tandem with the work they're doing on Picard while you've got kind of the work on the novel? Is it interesting sort of bouncing off writers as opposed to perhaps the usual sort of TV kind of creators that maybe don't sort of know kind of what the writer's job might be, or sort of maybe don't appreciate it as much as perhaps these two authors may do?
It's certainly reading the scripts that you felt immediately that this was a novelist's TV show. It felt novelistic. How do I define that? It's sort of tricky. My other half, who isn't a Trek fan in any way, sort of nobly, so I'll sit with you and watch it, absolutely loved it, and particularly loved the first 2 or 3 episodes of Picard, which he said, and this no high praise, he said felt like Smiley's People, the Le Carré adaptation, which of course started as a novel and a very intense, very broad sweeping novel as well. So it felt like it had risen, kind of come from a novelist's sensibility of this great scope and a large number of characters passing through a large period of time. So and I've read other scripts as well, and they feel like they've been imagined filmically, which doesn't give less depth in any way, but tends to have a kind of tighter, more visual focus. So the scripts felt different, and then of course working with someone like Kirsten, who's come up through the tie-in novels and is brilliant, knows Star Trek so well, was just a gift, because you felt absolutely that this project was part of this show, that it was meant to enhance or work with the show in a really positive and productive and expansive way. So it was a real, I felt like I was taking part in something special. It was just a dream project, one of these, once in a lifetime things, and yeah, great.
Could you ever see yourself maybe doing a similar journey to Byers, where you've gone through the Star Trek novels and kind of taking a go on sort of writing film scripts, TV scripts, maybe even sort of creating a Star Trek series? Is that something that you would like to do as well, or is this your sort of terra firma?
I'm very, very comfortable writing novels. Television writing, everything's sort of changing at the moment, obviously. Television writing, you probably need to be in Hollywood to be doing it. So you kind of need to be on the spot. But I mean, who knows? After we've had a global pandemic in the meantime, so who knows how production and things are changing. But I think because you probably need to be close to set to be able to do rewrites, as that's just how television works. So I'd love to do a Doctor Who, of course. Who wouldn't? And probably more, that writers on that are more remote. But I'm not. I know. I think like a novelist. So it would be a big task. And who knows? Who knows? We'll see.
The book, as I read it during sort of the first half of the season, it was impossible not to draw parallels kind of close here to Brexit, Scottish independence, climate change, global warming. But what I love about your book is sort of that I suppose it's the same with Picard in a way, is we can draw parallels with now, but I suppose Star Trek itself has always been timeless. You can apply things, after the fact. And it's impossible, kind of reflecting on your book, not to draw a lot of parallels with what we're seeing with the current pandemic, for example. It felt really striking. With your book and stuff, was it always sort of the aim to have these things where it's like, it's got the classic, Star Trek parallels with the time and world we live in, but it might also be a warning for the future? Unfortunately, in this case, the future has come very quickly.
It does kind of come to us all of a sudden, hasn't it? I think this is the skill of science fiction. What science fiction does is abstract. You're not writing a book about Brexit. You're writing a book about the decline of democratic institutions, or what happens when some people decide to fight a cause in a dirty fashion. Yeah, which is probably how the Leave campaign won, and what that does to democracy and trust, and what it does to our society. And science fiction lets you abstract that, and that's why I think when it's done well, which is what we all hope to do, it can feel like it has a timeliness and applicability that you as the author couldn't possibly have predicted. I certainly didn't have global pandemic on my immediate checklist, but things I had been thinking about were democratic decline and decline of institutions, and I think we've seen some of that in sort of how our institutions have responded. So whether the NHS is well equipped, or whether we moved quickly enough to the lockdown or wide-scale testing, or these kinds of things. So these are all, you're lucky as a science fiction novelist that you're commenting on broader trends that maybe give your stories applicability that you couldn't have guessed at. But it's just that you were kind of plugged into what was happening around you, I think. And Star Trek in particular has its own sort of applicability. It's about the state of the American dream, and that's in really quite a sad state at the moment. I think it's you're seeing, well, can we even call it incipient fascism now? You're seeing fascism, and so Star Trek it's the job of Star Trek to reflect on that and to reflect back on it, because Star Trek's a utopian dream, and America was a utopian dream. And I think what Picard is trying to do, the show, is show the path back to that, or the first faltering steps back to that. That's why I absolutely loved it. I know some people found it quite dark and felt it wasn't Trek as a result, but I felt it was like Trek under duress, that was saying, no, we've got to stick to the vision and stick to the ideals and find our way back to them. And that's what Picard was about to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think what I enjoyed about the series and the book is that they are, maybe this what it says about me is that they are ultimate tragedies. And I suppose your book kind of builds into that kind of dark space that Picard starts in, really, and then by the end it ends on that sort of hopeful note. I suppose you've kind of got to build up that sort of darkness with the way the kind of the world is at the time in the Federation. I thought it was a really rewarding read, and I loved it. And it must be fascinating for yourself as a kind of, with your sociology kind of background, is that here I am saying I see parallels between Brexit, Scottish independence, and then in America you will get reviews that will say this is the period of Trump, and I'm sure reviews from Europe will have their own interpretation. I'd listened to you in a podcast recently where someone went, I was listening to this and it made me think of the politics in Canada, for example, which, everyone's able to kind of put something into it. Is that exciting for you as an author, that people can take so much from your book, and, you may intend it in a certain way, but there's that kind of wonderfulness of people can go, oh, this author made me feel listened to and understood.
Yeah, well, that's really gratifying, because it shows that I've pulled off what I want, that I did what I was just talking about, that I was abstracting from something I was thinking about. So I think in that case of talking about Canada, that was thinking about Indigenous rights and First Nation rights, and probably the stuff that I know more about. Well, I know about the experience of colonialism in Ireland, but is Aboriginal Australian rights and colonialism in Australia. But if you try and abstract them from that, you're talking more generally about colonialism and the experience of oppressed First Nation people. And of course, that's going to have applicability in the Canadian context as well. So that's really, that kind of thing is extremely gratifying, because it shows that I've done what I wanted to do, which was to be moved by something that I saw around me and to abstract in such a way that people could apply it to their own particular situation. That's what you're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do as a science fiction novelist. It's to make people go, oh, hang on, that's a bit like that, isn't it? Oh, that made me feel or think or want to do certain things. Tremendously rewarding when people say things like that.
When did the deadline for you have to be submitted in? That's the lock on the book, and it's now got to go off, get published and written. Because I imagine there must be a slight challenge and perhaps anxiety of, like, your book has got to be submitted, but my God, those writers are still tweaking on episodes 1, 2, 3, and 6. It could still be months away. What was the experience like, and what was the turnaround time from the end of the book to the launch of the show?
It was really tight. Everyone around me was absolutely panicking, really, really panicking. You're going to get this, and you're going to get this book, and I was sort of, it'll be fine. It'll be absolutely fine. Everything will be fine. And I just burned the midnight oil on it. So I got it in. I went to France at the end of August, and I promised myself that it had to be done because that was the deadline. So it was about, it was a very tight turnaround, but we planned it so well, and outlined it so well, the sort of 3 or 4 of us working on it, that I just knew exactly what I was doing. I just had to sit down and write the damn thing, So that's the easy bit. It's the thinking that's the hard bit. J.M. Barrie used to say this. People would say, "Oh, how's the latest play going?" And he'd say, "Oh, yeah, it's all done. All I've got to do is write it." So it was all thought through. And then I think we had a round of quite small revisions. So most of what we'd done revising the story had been at the outline, and then the sort of re-outline stage. I think I did about a week or so of revisions. There was a scene that we thought needed to go in, and some finessing of other stuff, and some tweaking to one storyline. but you just can't let yourself panic about this kind of thing. You just got to go, okay, all right then. Well, what's the most efficient and effective way to sort of fix these things, and not worry about it. Just get it down on the page. I'd sort of missed my summer holiday with my little girl, and so there's a lot of that in Raffi. Sort of feeling bad about missing soccer matches, that sort of thing. So I tapped into those emotions for Raffi's plotline a lot. But so it was a very, very tight turnaround, and people were very, very worried for me. But I was having a ball. I wasn't going to let anything spoil my enjoyment on this.
With the kind of the show, when did you sort of get to see that for the first time? Because obviously the show came first for, I think it was maybe 2-3 episodes before your book landed, which felt odd at the time, but then it sort of seemed to work in really well, that you had this sort of first 3 episodes which seemed to set up the series really well, and then it's like, here's the book that will kind of flesh out further kind of these first 3 episodes and kind of set us up quite nicely for things to come.
Yeah.
When did you sort of first get to see it, on the screen?
I saw it on Amazon Prime. That's when I saw it.
Not even an invite to the premiere. That's shocking.
I didn't go to the premiere. No. I was so I saw it on telly. I couldn't have gone. I had childcare sort of stuff going on. So I saw it on the telly. So it was really exciting. So I'm here watching the telly. It's amazing. So that's when I first saw it. Yeah. So a day behind the States.
And then what was the reaction like? Because obviously this book comes out a few episodes in, people have settled into the TV series, and the reviews have been glowing for it. I mean, I said it to myself, like, for me, my Star Trek books that I read, I love the non-fiction. I love talking with people like yourself, that are involved in sort of the behind-the-scenes process and stuff. I remembered what excited me about it, because I was like, I'm going to read this Picard book. I got it on a payday treat, dived into it and finished it in a few days. And it was my first probably Star Trek fiction book I'd read since I was maybe like a kid, when you could just pick them up on the shelves. And I just loved it because it was always what I wanted from sort of that Star Trek world, that realpolitik, how it all worked, kind of an Aaron Sorkin version perhaps of the Star Trek universe, sort of on the brink of a disaster. And then my friend recommended going, Una McCormack, what she writes about the Kardashians, very similar, you'll love it. So I've got them lined up on my Kindle now.
Yeah, good.
What's been the reaction for you? Because I think this is probably one of the biggest Star Trek book releases. I mean, it's hardback, it's kind of bestseller lists, reviews, so much praise. What's it been like for you to be part of such an exciting project and to see all the kind of reviews, opinions, podcasts, kind of all reach out to you and kind of talk about your work?
Well, it's been a lark. It's been absolutely great. It's like, oh, fantastic! People are reading me. I better make sure I'm on message and get the things I want to say. It's absolutely great. I mean, I've been writing professionally for absolutely ages now, and no doubt I will carry on writing professionally from absolutely ages on. From here, I hope. And if this is the high spot, that's phenomenal. If this leads to even more sort of books that sell well and getting to do loads of stuff. It's just been huge fun from start to finish. Lots of interest in it. Lots of people saying lots of kind things and making a fuss of you. We had a lovely sort of launch down at sort of signing down at Forbidden Planet in London, and just lots and lots and lots of fun. So for a writer who's sort of been hacking away for a long time, to be doing a project that's got lots of attention and interest and enthusiasm is really good fun. So I've had a lark. I've just enjoyed it from start to finish. There was one signing that we didn't get to do up in Glasgow that got cancelled because of, it just wasn't safe to travel anymore. And that's the only way that even the sort of current situation sort of hit it. But which is a real shame, because I was doing a lecture up there as well. And we just couldn't do it. But I even managed to sort of sneak in the signings and things and before the lockdown started. So I've just had a lovely time of it all. If you like Sorkin stuff, you should read Keith de Candido's Articles of the Federation, which is
that's been on the list for a while.
Yeah, it's consciously a West Wing, Star Trek West Wing. So definitely, I mean, even the cover is sort of shot like that very famous shot of Kennedy that they use for Bartlett in the credits of the show. They have the Federation president in that pose as well. With the back.
Yeah.
So that's one you should definitely read. That's done as a West Wing. So yeah.
I,
So
I had a friend that was at the London launch. I was hoping to come through to the Glasgow one, but
yeah.
it must have been a great quirk of fate. I had a friend that went to the London one, and he went, "I've got something that I've just posted up to you,"
Oh,
and
right.
he had got me a signed copy of your book, so it's got pride of place
Oh,
in my
lovely.
room as
Oh,
well
I'm
and
glad
stuff.
about
So
that.
it,
Yeah, particularly as we had to cancel the Scottish. It was just gutting, but couldn't have done it. Wouldn't have been safe. So you can't trot around the country really. But we'll do. There'll be other books. There'll be other trips to FP Glasgow.
What's it like as an author as well? I'm curious about when you get reaction to a book, for example, because you are prolific on Twitter, you're really great engagement. What's it like when your book drops and then the mentions start to maybe increase that, hey, we've bought this book, or, Una McCormack's new novel out now. What's it like when fans can, have access to you quite quickly? Is it fantastic when you've got this exciting book, or can it be, a scary experience thinking, okay, those people have all started to read the book now, or wonder what kind of feedback I'm going to get? What's that like as a sort of an author there on Twitter, and you've got an audience who are quick to tell you their thoughts or critiques, perhaps?
People are uniformly nice. I've been incredibly lucky. Nobody has ever. The only time people have been a dickhead to me on Twitter or social media is probably when I've been a bit of a dickhead first. So so that's the only if I've kind of waded in on some fight or something, and looking for a bit argy late at night or something. But in terms of nobody has gone out of their way to come over and just be horrible to me about my books or about anything. They just haven't done it. They've either told me they've really enjoyed it, or they've just always been extremely nice, and that can only be extremely gratifying. That's just lovely. It's absolutely lovely. And then I do read reviews, obviously, because I'm a writer and I'm desperate and needy. And if the reviews don't like the book, then that's absolutely fine. You can't speak to everyone. I know I did. I worked my guts out doing this book and trying to make it the best book I possibly could. So I'm proud of what I did. If people didn't like it, that's fine. That's that means I didn't persuade them, and that's a shame. And I wish I could, because that way they wouldn't feel they'd have wasted their money, not least. But you can't please everyone, and if you know that you did the best job you could, then that's all you can ask of yourself. So and if you have persuaded some people to kind of come, on the ride with you, and they have taken something from it, then that's fantastic. But I've had a very lucky online experience. I know friends of mine have had a really rubbish time in comparison, but I'm just lucky.
And next up, you've got the exciting autobiography of Catherine Janeway. How's that process coming along? And do you get this scope that you did with, say, Picard, where we know Catherine Janeway from Caretaker through to Endgame. Do you get to sort of dive into that post-Endgame world that you've kind of fleshed out quite a bit, really, in the Picard novel, and then you've obviously got characters like Seven of Nine being able to kind of play a role in Picard? How kind of big is your scope for this book, and when can people expect it?
Well, it's out in July, and it's from Titan, and it follows the format of. There've been a couple of books like this already. There's been a biography of Kirk and an autobiography of Picard. Though I think a lot of that is kind of now, in limbo, one of those sort of multiverses we inhabit. Now we've had the Picard show, so it very closely follows the format of those of. I was born in such a place, and here's your childhood and the making of the person, and then we kind of closely follow the exploits on the show, and then there is scope in the book for sort of following up what happens next. And it was a really fun project. Picard had been very, very intense, and really, it's quite a grueling story and a grueling situation. And then, it's they have it's a grueling story in Voyager as well in many places, but it was also it was a lot lighter in tone. And first person, Catherine Janeway's voice, I had a great deal of fun writing it. So just really immersed myself in Voyager. And then again, another book that sort of wrote itself in a way. I read Kate Mulgrew's autobiographies to kind of get a sense of her cadences, and it's a very. She has I mean, this in a good way. She has a very sort of mimicable voice. It's a voice that's very distinctive and one that you can pattern as a writer. So I had a lovely time. It's out in July. The cover is up on Amazon. It's floating around. So yeah, I hope people like it. It's tying in with the sort of anniversary of the show and this kind of thing.
You remind me almost of Nicholas Meyer there, because with his sort of Sherlock novels, obviously he's got his association with Trek through some Discovery, Wrath of Cannon and Discovered Countries. When he approaches Sherlock Holmes, it's like, well, I'm actually just this author that's discovered this person's text, and I'm the editor, not the author. I love the parallel between your sort of self and Nick Meyer there, I must say.
It's a fun conceit, yes. It's sort of Janeway. I try to imagine it was really good fun, and it kind of alleviates the writing as well. Because if you pretend you're just interviewing Catherine Janeway, it doesn't feel like you're writing a book. So so that really was the kind of trick I played on myself to sort of write it. I'm just sitting here, we're having a cup of tea and some biscuits, and she's regaling me with all these stories, and I'm kind of typing them up, and we're laughing at the bits that won't be going in, that she sort of confided in, but these sorts of things. So it was good fun.
And finally, we're obviously in lockdown here at the moment. What books, novels, TV shows, what are you kind of reading and enjoying at the moment that you would maybe recommend people could check out, and maybe addition to your own work as well, that people could check out and try and make their lockdown just a bit more enjoyable?
More cheerful. Well, I won't recommend the young adult trilogy by Jean Ure from the late 90s about a plague that I've been reading. It's very, very good. She's very on point. It's Plague 99. It's on Kindle. Jean Ure, U-R-E. What else I've been reading? I'm reading another plague novel by Barbara Comins called Who Was Changed and Who Was Dead. I've just read a wonderful sort of State of the Nation novel called This Green and Pleasant Land, about a man who decides to commemorate his dead mother by building a mosque in his very, very, very small English country village, and the kind of fallout from that. That's by Aisha Malik. What else have I been reading? I read an awful lot, so lots of stuff I've been reading. Telly-wise, I've been watching... I've been working through the American Film Institute's top 10 westerns. So I've been watching those. We've got Unforgiven to watch next, and also watching a lot of old Doctor Who, and of course because my kid is at home and it's the Easter holidays, I'm watching a lot of Disney Plus. So I've watched a lot of Sophia the First and Elena of Avalor.
Perfect. Well, Una, thank you so much for joining me. If people want to reach out to you or not be a dickhead to you on social media, where's the best place to keep up to date with any of your sort of books and releases?
I can't promise that, be reciprocated. They will always find me on Twitter. I'm kind of semi-permanently on Twitter. So at Una McCormack, where I'm ranging between being quite nice and a bit of a dickhead.
Well, I think we all are at the moment, but honestly,
pretty much.
But honestly, thank you so much for giving up some of your time. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed. I really enjoyed that.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.